It was a Friday afternoon. I was struggling to get meetings, struggling to get through to people, and I was doing the usual typical salesman. Be happy, smile as you dial, put on this positive. Wasn't working. And my boss is a bit of a surly bastard. And he just comes out. He goes, what's wrong? I said, no one's answered. It's Friday afternoon. I can't. He goes, get up. And I had to get out of my seat. And he sat down in my seat. And he picked up the phone. And he sounded so miserable when he talked to the gate. Sounded so rude, almost. And he got past. And then he got through. But as soon as he got through, he switched. And he had a conversation. And he got a meeting. Right there and then. And he hung up the phone. He goes, that's how you do it.
Welcome to another episode of the I Used to Be Crap at Sales podcast. I'm Mark Akers, co-founder and head of sales at My Sales Coach. And today I'm joined by the nuclear option, the self-proclaimed UK's most hated sales trainer, someone whose audio name on LinkedIn is Leave Me Alone by the King of Pop, Michael Jackson. If you've not worked it out by now, today's guest is Benjamin Dennehy. Benjamin, welcome. Great to have you on the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm really good. It's good to be here. Thank you for inviting me on. It's always a pleasure to come and talk to you.
More than welcome, Benjamin. Really looking forward to this. Let's just kick this off with a yes/no question.
All right.
Did you used to be crap at sales?
Yes.
How crap are we talking?
Oh, so how crap? Well, I was like most salespeople. I'd show up, I'd throw up, and I'd hope. And I used to believe that people would buy on my winning personality and my command and knowledge of the product. And if I just presented it in an intellectually compelling way, they'd buy. And I fell into the trap that you've just got to do enough of those because eventually someone will buy. And that selling is just a numbers game of doing something well. Turns out that's all crap, but that's how most people sell.
I feel like there's two Benjamin Dennehys, and I feel like I've got the real one in front of me rather than...
I'll correct you. It's pronounced Dennehy. Everyone says hey. It's an interesting thing.
So I'm pleased you've done it. Dennehy.
Dennehy. Yeah, it's not even a he, but everyone always defaults to hey. I don't know. It should be Denner. I don't know what the hell it should be, but it's Dennehy.
Well, let's leave that in the podcast so all three listeners, including my dad, will know exactly how to pronounce your last name. So in terms of just a bit of a backstory, Benjamin, I obviously have had the opportunity to speak to you a number of times, more so than probably 99% of people that follow you on LinkedIn. Like I've met you at events and then through Trainio. And I've got to watch you train as well. So as part of Trainio, I was reinforcing a lot of your training, a couple of years ago now. But I remember one weekend, I had this random weekend where I was alone. My wife and my boy were not there. And I knew I had to watch your content. And I watched about 12 hours over the weekend.
No way.
Yeah, just watched it all. And I think what I've taken from what I see online, the UK's most hated sales trainer, self-proclaimed, the nuclear option. And then what I've witnessed when I've met you face to face, and we had a good, what felt like 45, maybe an hour at the Sales Innovation Expo before COVID. And then obviously watching your train. There's two Benjamins. There's the persona that you've created, and in my opinion, like genius persona that you've created for lots of reasons. Very divisive, and you will know that people will either love you or hate you. No one's really in the middle. I don't know what that split is like, and how many love and how many hate. I know you don't care, but that is just a character that you've made up. I know there's the real Benjamin that when I watched the training, very meticulous, incredibly intelligent, really understands selling and buying and the mindset of both people. It's the questions you ask, how you ask them, when you ask them, what you don't say, what you do and when. And I just wondering, I feel like I know, what Benjamin do I have in front of me today?
Probably the performer. Whenever I do an event, any podcast, any opportunity to speak, I have to always be in character. And it's only when you work with me or you meet me on a one-to-one basis that you see another side of me. And you're quite right. It's all done deliberately. It's part of the psychological game that I play. And the reason why I'm so harsh and blunt and brutal, the character that I created, is one, as you're right, it cuts through. And I'm designed to be controversial and challenging because I think most people in sales are stuck in a malaise and they don't realize how much of a malaise they're stuck in and they need to be slapped around to get out of it. And the other one is whenever people meet me, the most common expression I hear is, "You're a lot nicer than I thought you were going to be. You're a lot more chilled." And again, that's part of it. So if a prospect's expecting me to be a certain way, and then I'm not that way, and I come in and I'm far more nurturing and far more empathetic, I get their defense wall to lower a lot faster. So the whole character is created to feed into when I get in front of people. So so it's been designed on purpose. And like I said, a lot of people would know that, but that is the reason for it.
I mean, it just makes sense. And like, I almost feel like it must be fun to get to be the bad guy and just put things out there, knowing that it's always like you've got a mask on. And as I say, when I watched those 12 hours of training, you were teaching people that had never been an SDR before, the basics of pitching, cold calling, how to lead with problems. I just saw this totally different side to you. And as I say, I watched it and I was compelled just to watch the whole thing, and I took a lot from your training as well, particularly around the mindset. How did you learn all of that? I know it's a huge question, but like where does this start from you? Like, I suppose, why don't we break that question down then?
Yes.
Right, let's look at where you learn to sell. And when I looked at your LinkedIn, you got, once you finished being young, free, and not committed, you got your first role at Hayes Recruitment.
First role with Hayes, yes.
Lasting 6 months.
Yes.
What happened there? 6 months? Like, if I was interviewing you, I'd think you failed in that role.
Yeah. So I suppose I was asked a question on a podcast several months ago about when did I first start selling. And I did say it was my first sales job with Hayes. But then I realized, actually, I'd always been selling as a child. I completely forgot about this. I've always never had a fear of putting myself out there. I've never really cared what people think. So selling requires a very thick skin. And the less you care about what people think about you, actually, the better you are as a salesman. Unfortunately, most people fall into sales because they have a pathological need to be liked. Whereas I'm quite the opposite. So throughout my childhood, I was always selling. So I used to, every year, to raise money for our school, they'd sell these absolutely shitty plastic products. Plastic lunch bags, plastic pegs, plastic pen, all plastic. And you go from door to door in your neighborhood, knocking on the doors, trying to get people to buy this tack. I also used to try to get sponsorship. There was something when I was a kid growing up called the 40-hour famine. I don't know if you ever have it over here. It was to raise money for starving kids in the third world, and you would not eat from 6 o'clock Friday to lunchtime Sunday. And as a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old, that was really quite hard. So you'd get sponsored by the hour, and you'd raise money. And I went to law school because you asked me what did I want to be when I grew up, and I wanted to be a lawyer, and I did become a lawyer. I qualified as a barrister. And then I realized I didn't want to be a barrister. I'm one of those guys that likes to achieve something. Then once I've done it, it's kind of, I'll move on to something new now. And then so I had to get a job. I decided to go traveling. And I spent years, as you point out, working in pubs and having a lot of time. But then I finally had to grow up, and I needed a proper job. And what do you do if you're a lawyer who's never really had a job? What do? There's nothing. All I can do is interview well and string sentences together pretty well. So the only thing I'm suitable for was selling. So that was my first job, was in Hayes as a recruiter. But you are right. I didn't recruit anyone. I set a company record. Didn't recruit a single person. I was absolutely shite at it. I guess I just didn't like it. But so I was given my notice. I was literally told, you got 1 week. You got till next Friday. And if you don't achieve anything, you're out of a job. So that was a motivator, a Kickstarter. So I went in the next week and all I did was prospect my guts out. They used to call it canvassing back in the day, canvassing. And I canvassed and I got a load of appointments. with companies that a lot of people in my office had tried to get into before, but had never had any luck. So I got a stay of execution. The manager at the end of the week said, Benjamin, let's delay our meeting. I want you to do next week what you've done this week. Just do more of that. So I did it again, got a load of meetings. And then we had my meeting. They said, okay, I'll tell you what, Benjamin, this is what we're going to do. You're not going to be a recruitment consultant because clearly you don't have the aptitude or ability. I don't know why. I mean, I'm it's not the heart, but anyway, I lack something. But what we want you to do is we want you to do purely lead generation for the others to go on the meetings. So that's how I sort of fell into prospecting as a career. And ironically, I ended up getting poached by another company that specialized in lead generation for advertising and marketing agencies in London. So that's how the Hayes thing. So Hayes kicked it off. And yeah, had I not turned out to be a crap recruiter, I never would have become a prospector, and then I never would have led on to where I am today. So that's how it all began. I fell into sales just like everybody else. I didn't choose this. I just had to do it.
And you're right. Like that's how most people end up in. Like they just fall into it. Like I'm
Absolutely.
yet to meet someone that wants to grow up and be a salesman. Yet to meet a student at uni that wants to be a salesman. It doesn't happen. So obviously, it sounds like when you were recruiting, you were crap. You were trying.
It seems so. Yeah, I look back at it, I don't know why, but I mean, I think at the end of the day, because I thought it was I'll tell you what I disliked about recruitment. And I think it was more of an ethical thing, and I didn't like deep down what they were doing. I remember listening to consultants convincing someone to stay in a job that they were hating so that once they hit the 3-month mark, the client couldn't get a refund or a free replacement and they'd lose their commission. So I remember listening to this and thinking, I still had a bit of ethics in me younger back then. I remember thinking, this seems wrong. And I just don't think I liked it. And because I didn't like it, I thought, I don't care. So I think that's probably the real reason. I thought it was unethical. It might have changed, but I don't know.
Who knows? Recruitment.
Recruiters will let us know after this podcast goes out.
If they listen.
If they listen.
So yeah, then I saw you moved on to be an account manager, but the bio actually said appointment setting. So I'm guessing, did you book an appointment with them and they're like, you're
So this
good?
was it. So my job then was, it was a company called New Business or NB. It eventually went bust. But when I went in, this would have been the mid-2000s. Lots of money sloshing around and advertising agencies. They only worked with advertising agencies. And they would basically pay my employer between £3,000 and £5,000 a month for someone like me to sit on the phone and get them appointments. Now, I would have at any given time 4 clients. So he's making between £12,000 and £15,000 a month off of my labour. And my job was to set appointments, and you were normally targeted with 3 or 4 per client a month. So you're looking at pretty much a meeting a day. And I was actually quite good at it, though. So I was talking to brand managers, brand directors, account directors, marketing directors, anyone in the industry. And I can't think of a big company in the UK that I haven't set an appointment with at some point. Pepsi, Coke, Nestle, Mondelez, Kellogg's. Yeah, most of them I've set meetings for during this period. And so that was a very big learning curve. And now my boss, I've got to be careful because I mentioned the company name, so I won't speak too disparagingly about him. Put it this way, he did things that I didn't think were quite right. But one thing he did do, I remember this distinctly. It was a Friday afternoon. I was struggling to get meetings, struggling to get through to people, and I was doing the usual typical salesman. Be happy, smile as you dial, put on this positive. Wasn't working. And my boss is a bit of a surly bastard. And he just comes out. He goes, what's wrong? I said, no one's answered. It's Friday afternoon. I can't. He goes, get up. And I had to get out of my seat. And he sat down in my seat. And he picked up the phone. And he sounded so miserable when he talked to the gatekeeper. He sounded so rude almost. And he got past. And then he got through. But as soon as he got through, he switched. And he had a conversation. And he got a meeting. Right there and then. And he hung up the phone. He goes, that's how you do it. And he just fucked off. And I remember thinking, I can't be like that. That's not me. But that's what got me thinking. I had to be like that. I was phoning up, always trying to be me on the phone, always trying to be who I am. And what I realized in that moment is being who I am is irrelevant. I've got to be the personality or the character that the gatekeeper needs to do her job and put me through, and that the prospect needs to feel comfortable wanting to talk to me. And that's when I realized I have to be an actor. This isn't just be you. And you always thought, be yourself, be authentic, be genuine, just be you. Actually, turns out that's bollocks because most people don't naturally like your personality. About 1 in 5 people share your personality. The other 80% probably think you're a bit of a knob at first instance. So I got to start giving people the personality they need, not the one that I want to give them. So that actually started the journey of discovery, actually, all from this one guy sitting on the phone behaving in a way that I thought was wrong. But it turned out he was right.
How much of that moment do you think was calculated by your boss? Like, do you think he knew what he was doing, or it was just how he was? And because you said he switched, but
Yes.
equally, I'm wondering how much intelligence was behind that decision versus how much
One
luck.
does wonder. Yeah, I wasn't smart enough to ask him because he was a bit freaky and a bit pissed off. I don't know. But he was always good at getting in front of people. So I think there was a lot of intelligence behind it. He was just no good at imparting that in a way. He was no trained. There was no teaching, no education, no training, just sink or swim. And so that's, yeah. But I think in some ways I kind of like that because I think in sales, you have to be a natural self-starter and self-motivator. And if you can't, you're never going to be very good at it. Anyone that sets up a business like you have and I have, you have to be a self-starter, self-motivator. You have to be able to go out when you could just sit around and do nothing. When all your friends are doing stuff, you actually, I've got to work on my business. So it takes a lot. So I think, if you soften it too much for people, you're actually doing them a disservice and trapping them in a career that really they're not suited to.
I think so. At that point, certainly resonates. I think so. One of the things, I don't want to plug it too much, but give the context. One of the things that we can provide at My Sales Coach is an assessment, and the assessment will look at someone's will to sell, their sales DNA, and their tactical aspects. Tactics, we always expect to be low on the assessment because no one's really had formal training. Like vast majority of salespeople have never had formal training. Sales DNA, some of that comes with experience, some of that you just have, some of that you learn. But the will to sell, if they're low on commitment, low on desire, low on motivation, they're not going to succeed.
No.
And you obviously had that.
Yes.
But the manager didn't help you. And I'm wondering, what were you doing when you got served your notice, other than just hustling and trying hard? Were you doing anything to try and learn how to do this job?
So I worked for this company for about 18 months, and then it suddenly dawned on me, I could make a lot more money if I went out and found my own advertising agencies and worked directly for them instead of being the middleman like this guy is. So I did. I quit. I gave my notice, and I did what I was doing for my clients. I prospected advertising agencies in London, and I said, tell you what, this is the deal, though. Instead of outsourcing, I'll come and sit in your office 1 day a week, and I'll make calls from your office and I'll get you appointments. That way, it's open, it's transparent. There's none of this, is he actually working on our account, which you can get when you're outsourcing, you don't know. Are the leads genuine? Because a lot of times you would share leads in these call centers. Someone would book a meeting with, say, the brand director of Pepsi, and then everyone else would then phone the brand director. And, so it was all a bit, and you got paid commission if someone, but anyway. So I said, I can eliminate all of that. I can be open. I can be transparent. You can hear what I'm saying, how I'm saying it. And it was from that experience that I started getting quite a lot of good feedback from my clients. They all used to say to me, you're very good at getting appointments. We've used other agencies in the past and we've outsourced in the past. We've never had the results that you've got. Why? I remember one CEO literally saying to me, he ran a travel and tourism agency. He said, why are you so good? What is it you do? And I said, I don't know. I said, I honestly don't really know. I said, but I do know certain things work. And he goes, like what? I said, well, the more I struggle, the more people help me. I said, I don't understand that. But what I've discovered is the less professional I am, the more time people give me. I said, I put on a fake stutter. I said, very hard to hang up on a man with a stutter. Just seems rude, right? So I used to do that. I said, And I said, what I found is the less I talked about what we did, the more interested people seemed to be. I said, Spy, I don't know why any of this works. And he said to me, he said, I'll tell you what, he goes, you're wasted just doing this. He goes, if you can figure out why what you do works and then teach other people, he goes, that's where the money is for you. It's almost like that McDonald's moment in the Founder movie when he says to him, what business are you in? He goes, burgers. He goes, no, you're not in the burger business. You're in the land business. You own the land, you own the... And that was my burger moment. No, you're not in the set meetings business, Benjamin. You're in the teach people how to set meetings business. And yeah, and from that, I got introduced to a guy that you know, Marcus Kalki. Yeah. And he opened my eyes to a lot of psychology and a lot of things. And I spent some time with him, mentoring under him and learning from him, and then taking it and just literally going out and trying to get really, really good. That was it. It was just, I know these things work. I now know why they work. I understand the psychology behind why it works. I just now have to master it. And if I master it, I'll never be poor, broke, or hungry ever again. That's exactly what I did. It took a long time to get really good, but I was determined. And every time I wanted to quit or go back to doing it the old ways, I would say to myself, if you were truly competent at this, is there any reason it wouldn't work? And it was always no. So you have two choices. Admit it's beat you or keep going out there and getting good until you've mastered it. I chose the second option every time, even though it was the hardest.
Really just was, I could have kept listening there. Some of it I've heard you say before, like the training,
oh good, it means I'm not making it up. That's nice.
Yeah, like I remember listening to you, and I remember you telling these students through Drainio about the stutter, about forgetting things, about mishearing, and it did. I just thought, bloody hell, like there's so much into this. You said it took you a long time to master it. Do you feel like you're a master now?
No, I think no. I still have lots more to learn. I think the reason I came up with the title UK's Most Hated Sales Trainer is because I didn't want to sound like everyone else in sales that thinks they're good. And they all say number one, top performer, top biller, 10x. It's the usual look at me, like me sort of crap. And I came to the conclusion that if you want to be an expert in something, other people have to call you an expert. If you call yourself an expert, yeah, I don't buy into that. So I've never, you could read anything I've ever written. And I know you've read my stuff over the last 10 years. Not once have I ever referred to myself as a thought leader, a sales leader, a guru, an expert. I've just put out my ideas and concepts, and you either like it or you don't. I know they work, so I don't care if people say it's bollocks. It's like, well, that's your problem. You haven't even tried it. And the only reason you don't want to try it is because deep down, I know you know it'll work. It's just the fear of having to change is what prevents you. Yeah, it's like trolls on LinkedIn. The reason people troll you isn't because they think you suck. It's just they're miserable with their own life. This is the only way they can feel better. So I know when I meet people that are the most negative about what I teach is because deep down they're the ones that know it'll work the most and they realize how much they're going to have to change. Most people don't want to change. So, yeah. So I've just went out and got as good as I could.
And how long do you feel that process took? You said it took a long time. Except you're not a master at the moment.
I would say, I mean, I've been doing sales training now pretty much, I think it's 10 years next year, 2025. I started properly doing it around 2015. So between 2010 and 2015, I was trying to master all of these techniques so that it was done in a way where it came across as natural. This is the thing with technique and skill. When you first learn it, it's clunky, you can see it, it's a move. It's how do you take this and manage to utterly personalize it so that it's no longer a technique, it's actually just your way of communicating. It's just who you are. And so people are unable to separate your character from your personality. And it takes a while, and all my clients and all my students say, this is really hard because under pressure, you always revert back to type. You always revert back to your original programming. So I was cold calling yesterday. I was filming a load of cold calling sessions yesterday here in the office, and got through to this guy. And the people filming it said it was fat because I got a meeting. I wasn't intending. I was trying to get 10 no's in a row. Yeah, I only got to the number 5, and I got a yes. And this was a guy that said, he goes, no, I hate cold calls. He goes, I'm not a fan of them. I don't like receiving them. I said, okay, well, look, before you hang up, can I ask, why do you hate them? Is that because you don't believe their work, or is that just because you personally dislike them? He goes, well, it's a bit of both. I go, what does that mean? Then this guy ended up opening up, and then he said, look, we don't even need cold callers. And he starts rambling, and all I did was listen. And anything he said, I just ask a question. And he goes, and we win about 30 to 40% of our pitches. I go, well, why are you still pitching and quoting? He goes, well, you got to. I go, I know, I'm assuming you charge for them. He goes, well, what do you mean charge for them? I go, well, you're not going out just doing free quotes and proposals, are you? He said, well, yes. He goes, I don't believe you can charge. I said, well, when you say you don't believe, what do you mean? He goes, well, I just don't think it'll work. I go, do you don't think it'll work, or do you think it would be wrong? It's and then you can hear this guy's going through the motions, and he said, and this is all my job is. I'm a therapist, and at the end of it, he said, "It's all right." Because I think we should meet. He goes, I found this conversation thoroughly enlightening, and he goes, maybe you can help me. I said, well, maybe I can. I said, I don't know, but let's have our meeting and see where it goes. So that's all selling is. It's just listening to the prospect. It's not going in with a prepared list of questions. Like a cross-examination. It's more a therapy session. And if more people realize that, they'd realize how easy selling is. Yeah, and people just don't get this. And it frustrates me at times, but my clients that work with me all get it, and they see it. So, yeah, it's a bittersweet sort of thing, the world I operate in. People that work with me get it and love it. People that hate it constantly slag it off, and it's like, but you haven't even tried it because you're chicken shit.
So many things I could ask. And one of the things I noticed, and I want to get your take on this, is in that example, when you were asking questions like, why don't you like cold calls? You always gave two options.
Yes.
Now, most people would do that actually. They would just give what they think the answer is, not really learn anything. I think a lot of salespeople that are trying to perfect would kind of ask the question and shut up.
Open-ended. Everyone's ask open-ended questions. And it's like, well, no, an open-ended question is appropriate if an open-ended question's appropriate. But your strategy isn't you should always be asking, no, that's stupid. I'm trying to direct a conversation, and I'm trying to control a conversation. So I have various techniques. So I call that the multiple choice. Yeah, it's always A, B, C, or something else. So when you say you don't like cold calls, is that because you don't like receiving them? Is that because you don't like making them, or some other reason? So now they have to pick one of the two or give me a third. And this is the thing that most people don't realize. Every human being has been programmed from birth that they have to answer a question. Can't help it. The ones that don't answer it are the ones that have learned they don't. Yeah, because they know their job is to guard information. But most people, if you ask them a question, will answer it. CEOs, right down to the janitor. And most people don't aware of this. I'm aware of it. So I know that if someone asks me a question, I'll just go back with a question. So this guy on the phone call asked me, so he goes, Benjamin, he goes, are you a company? Is it just you, or do you have a team of trainers? And I can give an answer in the form of a question. I said, well, if I told you it was just me, I get the feeling you're going to tell me that would disappoint you. See, now it's a question. He goes, no. I go, well, you're hoping for a team of trainers. No. He goes, no, I don't care. You see, and this is the other reason. Most of the time, prospects ask questions. They don't actually care for the answer. So there's no point even answering them. All you can do is shoot yourself in the foot. Yeah.
And I'm with you. Like, there's times where you just need to get a yes or a no, or you need to get an answer. And I was just wondering if that was calculated by giving which it is. And I knew that from your training, but again, I wanted the audience to hear that.
Absolutely. So presumptive question. That's another type of questioning people don't use. So a presumptive is where you assume they've done something. But I ask it knowing the odds are they haven't. And so by saying, so when I said to him, but I take it you charge for those proposals, I knew he'd say no. And then I get to go deaf. I go, sorry? And he goes, no. I said no. And then I said, okay, why don't you charge for them? Well, I just don't. Now he said, so I'm controlling the conversation. This isn't pre-scripted. but I'm in control. So any question that I hear, I answer with a question, and all I do is ask questions, because a salesman's job is to extract information, not give it. My job is to figure out, are you someone that can actually buy from me? I'm not here to convince you to buy from me. I can't. And there are more reasons for you not to buy from me than there are for you to buy from me. So I need to figure out, can you buy from me? So my job isn't to convince you that this warehouse full of widgets is good. I know they're fucking good. We built a business selling widgets. You need to convince me that you're able to buy them. It's a total mindset change. And again, so many people struggle with this. It's like, no, you can't do that. You can't act like you can. You've just got to have the guts.
So, Benjamin, like, obviously that makes a lot of sense. On your LinkedIn, you've got various roles where you're a consultancy, so you're going in, you're selling your time, etc. Let's get back to, because we've heard a lot about how you got good and the journey you went on.
Yeah.
When I asked you, did you used to be crap at sales? You said yes.
Yes.
What point of your career comes straight to the front of your mind when I ask you that question?
It would be going back to the early days when I was prospecting. And basically, I did what most people prospecting do. I was trying to beg my way into people's diaries, and I was good at begging my way into people's diaries. But what I discovered is, and when I went out on my own, this was the other thing that I discovered. Advertising agencies, they didn't actually care if they sold. They just liked the idea of getting in front of the marketing director. And so what I discovered very quickly is they never needed anything qualified. As long as I got in front of the brand director for Pepsi, it didn't matter that he said, look, I don't have actually anything for you. I know you don't have that, but I can guarantee that if you see what we have, you're going to be really, really blown away by it. It's going to kickstart you. Look, honestly, please, just give us half an hour of your time, and I promise. And eventually they'd relent. And and I had various different tricks and ways of sounding like that. And my clients used to come back and say, oh, they were slightly disappointed you weren't there, because they were quite looking forward to meeting you, and all of this. And then I'd ask them, so how's it going? Well, it went really well. I go, what do you mean it went well? How'd it go? Well, it went well, well, there's nothing right now, but we've got the door open, Benjamin. We've got our foot in the door. We've been in front of them. It's all about, and then it was all about building relationships and nurturing this. And I remember saying, this all seems completely wrong. All you do is show up, throw up, and then hope something will happen. And I said, look, I don't know how to sell. But what I do know is that this is wrong. And everyone said, Benjamin, I've been doing this for 20 years. This is the way it's done. And I remember thinking, well, I don't think this is right. And I'm going to try and figure out how to actually sell, because there's got to be a better way than just doing this over and over again. And this is where I realized all those phrases came from. It's a numbers game. You've got to be in it to win it. These are all phrases we tell ourselves to justify running on a little rat race wheel and achieving nothing. And then when I looked deeper into it, I suddenly realized all those expressions are from the lottery. You've got to be in it to win it. It's a numbers game. They're all lottery jingos. So this is a lottery. And if it's a lottery, you have no control over the outcome. That's no way to grow a business.
Could be you. Talk to me about the lowest point you've had, because you shared again like the journey you've gone on. What's the lowest point you've had in sales?
So the lowest point would have probably been, I think, 2016, 17. I was really struggling. What I'd done in end of 2014, I believe it was, is I decided I want to do sales training as a full-time job. But I also kept the prospecting side of my life going. So I had an income coming in from prospecting. So I spent half the day prospecting or doing whatever I had to do to get my clients their meetings to, get my retainer. And then the rest would be trying to sell and prospect in sales training services. And I came to the conclusion. I said to my wife, look, this isn't working. I'm not making any traction on the sales training side. And I said, I know why. And she said, why? I said, because I have a guaranteed income coming in from the other prospecting. And I said, look, the only way I'm going to get good at this is I have to force myself to do it. I said, so I'm going to fire my clients and we're going to have to live on our meager savings and credit cards until I get this working. I said, so the thing I do with everything in life is you've got to ask yourself, what is the absolute worst case scenario? What's the worst case scenario? I said, what's the worst case scenario if we do this, my dear? I said, we're not going to be homeless. We live in the West. We live in a socialist country. The government ain't going to make it. We're not going to be homeless. We're not going to be living on the streets. Plus, we got friends and family. They said, we're not going to be homeless. So the worst thing is what? Bankruptcy. I said, we don't have anything really now. And all bankruptcy does is set you back to zero. I said, so I'm willing to go bankrupt if you are. She said, okay, well, I believe in you. I said, fine. So that's it. So that was it. I cut off my income stream and said, now you got to go out and do it. And it didn't quite start the way I'd hoped because it took longer than I thought. So anyway, I'm now 8 credit cards down, £45,000 in debt. I've got how old now? I must have a 3-year-old, 4-year-old daughter living in a rented apartment. And I remember crying at times. Like, I can't make this work. And I wanted to quit. But every time I wanted to quit, I asked myself the same question. If you were actually any good at all the things you're trying to learn and want to teach, will it work? Like, well, yes. Then you either admit defeat. Okay, because what was my option? If I quit now, what are you going to do? You have to go back to the other way. And you don't like the other. So I was stuck. I literally was, I had to do this. And I just kept pushing through. And you don't see changes in yourself because they're incremental. It's not until... And then one day I just got in front of a CEO of a very big company, cold called him, got in front of him, and the meeting went so well, we get to the end, he goes, I want to work with you. He goes, I don't even know what you're going to charge me, but I know you can help me. And so I had this external validation from this guy, and this guy was really successful. And I remember thinking, this is good. From that, I suddenly had a boost, and I went out, and the business started to grow, started getting more people to my events, more people started buying, and it just got compounding and pounding, and the better I got, the more I attracted. But it was a long journey. But I was willing to go bankrupt. This is what most salespeople are. I was willing to put everything I had on the line to get good. And this is why I'm so fussy when I work with companies. If your salespeople aren't willing to stump up out of their own money to get better at this, I wouldn't invest in them. Don't invest in people that won't invest in themselves. I don't believe in this bullshit. Oh, you got to... No. Every lawyer, every surgeon, every accountant I know had to spend their own money and their own time mastering those skills. Sales is the only one where you turn up with no background, no education, and then expect everyone to spoon feed you the answers. And then no wonder why no one likes us and why we're useless.
Take me back to 8 credit cards in, £45,000 in debt, a 3-year-old girl. You're crying at times.
Yeah.
Where do you go when you cry? You quiet corner of the room by yourself? Is it in front of the wife?
Yeah, it was usually, yes, it was sitting at my desk in the spare room, in despair. My wife said she could hear. She goes, I always remember, I would hear you. You would be, she goes, it would be funny. You'd be on the phones at 8:30 in the morning. She goes, I knew you'd be sitting there just in your boxers and a t-shirt, but yet you were always putting on this act, sounding like this slightly pissed off, frustrated CEO to get past the gatekeepers. And she goes, I used to hear you day in, day out. And she goes, I used to have so much sympathy for you. And I said, it's what you have to do to grow a business. It's not handed to you on a platter. It was hard. It was hard, but I always had that hope. Not that hope. I always knew that the stuff would work. I just wasn't good at it. Yeah? You can't say I can't ride a bike and riding a bike doesn't work just because you can't ride one. People ride bikes all the time. They jump off cliffs, out of planes, on parachutes on bikes. You can do anything on a bike if you know how to use it. You've just got to learn how to use it. So, yeah, just because I can't ride one doesn't mean they don't work. And that was the same approach. Just as I can't do this doesn't mean it don't work. I've just got to get good or quit. Those are the choices.
Who helped you through that period? It can be a lonely game.
It was lonely. So there are a couple of guys. Obviously, Marcus Kalki, he was always there. Another gentleman called Brad Burton. Brad Burton, UK's #1 motivational business speaker. In fact, meeting him was what kick-started my branding, actually. we've got a story. In fact, I had lunch with Brad just last week. We've remained friends. And our story is, I was supposed to go to a networking event at 7 a.m. or whenever it started. And I was lying in bed at 5 a.m. And I remember this voice says, I can't be. And then this other voice said, this is your job. Until you don't need to do this, you have to do that. So I got up and I drove all the way to Portsmouth from where I live in Bournemouth, like 60 miles away, to go to a breakfast networking event, because that's what you do when you're trying to build a business. And unbeknownst to me, Brad Burton, the guy that owned all of Fournette, was going to be there. I didn't know that until I arrived, and remember thinking, well, this is fortuitous. I remember thinking, you got to stand up, you got to give your little 30-second pitch on who you are and whatnot. And I remember thinking to myself, the only man in this room I want to impress is Brad Burton. I want the guy that owns this company to want to talk to me. So I stood up and I let rip about why it's all your mother's fault you can't sell and you're a pathetic loser, right? And he loved it. He made a beeline for me when you got to swap your cards of who you wanted to talk to. And he said, how come I've never heard of you before? I said, because I'm a nobody. He goes, no, you got something. You got something. He goes, you need to figure out a way of marketing yourself. He goes, like me. Number 1 motivational business speaker. He goes, how do you think I became it? I don't know. He goes, read page 26 of my book. So page 26 of his book, what does it say? I made it up. And so I did one of his courses, How to Be a Better Speaker. And that was where the idea to create this character came from. So Brad Burton was a big influence in seeing in me something that maybe I hadn't quite seen. That was very important. And he kept saying, you've got something, go out there, you'll make it, just go out there. Yeah. So he's been a good source of inspiration and confidence, I guess, at times as well. Him and Marcus Calky.
How close were you to giving up?
Oh, very close. But the problem was, and this is it. And I'll be upfront with people. If you're in sales, unless you go off and retrain as something completely differently, like a teacher or a barista or a lawyer or an accountant or something, you have no transferable skill set as a salesman. You think about it. If you're in sales, what jobs advertise for wanted ex-salesmen? What skills do they list that you have? Yeah, the only options you have as a salesman is either completely retrain and get out of sales, but you don't want to get out of sales because you know there's more money in sales. You know, if you become a teacher, you're going to be stuck on 27K a year for years, and you go, I don't want 27K. I want to be able to earn 50. But if you're not earning 50 and stuck in sales, it's miserable. So where do you go? You've got nowhere to go unless you set up a business, but then you're selling again. So if you're in sales and you're not very good, it's a very lonely, depressing place to be because there's nowhere to go other than something completely different. And so a lot get stuck and they just go through the motions for the rest of their life. It's not hard to be in sales for 30 years and not really achieve a lot. Yeah, you just got to swap jobs every 3 years because they'll always hire for experience, right? So, but think about it. If someone was to write a job advert, what would they write that would be, you suddenly, oh, they're looking for a salesman. Is there any other? There isn't one. You're stuck, right? So I realized it doesn't, unless I go back to New Zealand to become a lawyer, which I'd qualified to do. I had that option, but I didn't want to do that. So I'm stuck. I'm stuck. There's literally nothing else to do. I have to make this work. So no matter how despairing it got, I was almost, I'm a prisoner here, unless I fundamentally want to change my life. Turns out I did fundamentally change it by sticking at selling them.
And it feels like you had people to really help you through that period and mentor and coach you.
Yeah, I had people, had my faith, so I was always praying. I remember, this is a true story, I was praying one day, and my daughter was in the lounge. She must have been 5, something like that. Only a little kid. But I was praying, and I must have been praying out loud, saying, dear God, when is this going to work? I remember sometimes you get these little, my daughter just said, she just said, it was the weirdest thing. She just said, not yet, Dad. And I went, what? And she just said, not yet. And it was the weirdest thing. It's like, well, maybe that's a message. Not yet. From a 5-year-old kid who was listening to me pray. I don't know how she came up with that thought. Maybe God inspired her, but it was one of not yet. So all these little moments that just kept me going. But yeah, it's a very lonely place, sales, if you're not doing very well. It's a very lonely place. And I know what it's like. So that's why I like helping people, because I know where you're at. And I say, but you do have a choice. You either give up and admit that's beaten you, which is fine. You're allowed to do that. There's nothing wrong with admitting something's beat you. Or if you don't want to quit, don't grumble, don't moan, don't whinge. Go out and get better. That's it.
So, I didn't realize you're a man of faith. So you pray regularly?
I do. It keeps me going. Yeah, I can't rely on humanity. That'd be stupid.
And then, where do people start? Let's just imagine someone's listening to this right now.
Yeah.
They're crap. They're struggling. Maybe they're on their second or third credit card. They're trapped. I understand exactly what you're saying there. Where do they start? What do they do?
Where do they start? That's a good question. Where do you start? Well, the first thing you got to admit is you don't know how to sell. I think that's the first thing you got to admit you don't know what you're doing. I think a lot of people don't want to admit that, because if you admit that, how do you go to your boss if you're in a sales job and say, look, boss, I'm going to be upfront with you. I don't have a fucking clue what I'm doing. I don't know how to sell. I don't know. Because what do most managers do? Most are pretty crap. And I'll just say, we just follow the script, stick to the script. See, no one ever teaches you or helps you understand why we're selling or what the purpose of selling for is, or how you communicate with you. No one teaches you any of this. They just expect you to go out because that's the way they were trained. And because no one ever shows you why you're doing what you're doing or how it works, it's very hard. So if you are struggling right now in sales, what you need to do is you need to admit you don't know how to sell, and then you've got to look for help. It may not be at work. It may be external. It's people like me or other people. I don't care who you go to, but you've got to turn to somebody for help. But then also, when you're appealing to this person for help, you have to assess them on how they're interacting with you, because how anyone interacts with you in sales is what they're going to be like as a salesperson. And so if you kind of see yourself in the way they're behaving, I probably wouldn't hire them either. Yeah? Because if you see them behaving like you and you start to feel comfortable, it's because you're seeing so. If you want to get good, you have to become uncomfortable. Yeah? So you got to start doing things that make you uncomfortable. And if you buy help from people that tell you what you want to hear, you're not getting help. It's like the prosperity gospel. Big in America. Believe in God and you'll be wealthy, healthy, and successful. I don't know where it says that in the Bible. In fact, most people have miserable lives in the Bible if you read it. Their lives ended pretty badly. But when you hear what you want to hear, I can 10x your business. All you got to do is this. And that's what people are like. They're looking for a quick fix, a quick answer. It took me 5 years to qualify as a barrister, and then I was a junior, a runt. Yeah, 4 years to qualify as an accountant, 7 years to qualify as a doctor, and then you're a junior. You're at the bottom of your profession to be considered a sales professional. What is it? 3 days product knowledge, a new suit, a CRM system, and you are one. You're now a sales professional. No, you're not. No. There's nothing about. So you have to say to yourself, if I'm feeling like this, I've got to figure out how to sell, and it's not just going out there and blagging it. It's not a numbers game. There's got to be a skill to this. There's got to be a way to get good. And I know how to do that. And that's what I teach people to do, but it's uncomfortable and it takes a lot of time. You're learning a profession.
It's uncomfortable, I think, is the key.
Very uncomfortable. Because you've got to learn to communicate differently, act differently, behave differently from the way you've been raised.
Let's just break that down, because I've said this before. Like you say, to get into sales, there's no barrier to entry.
No.
Anybody could go and get a form of sales job somewhere. Like they exist. So there's no barrier to entry. There's no qualifications. you can get a sales job.
Yeah.
Why do you feel so many people take that low barrier to entry job, but have the ego that I know what I'm doing, I'm experienced, I'm seasoned, etc., rather than be open and admit that this is a skill that can be mastered. I'm going to work with someone that's walked in my shoes, had success in my role, achieved what I want to achieve. Why is there so much ego in a role that anyone can just fall into with no barrier to entry?
I think you need it because if you didn't have it, you'd have to admit you're a loser. So I think the ego is a protectionary measure against the realization of reality. Let's think about it. But yeah, most people, as you say, I'd say 95% of people fall into sales. It's not what they wanted to do. So you gone to university and you've studied, I don't know, sports psychology or gender studies, and you suddenly realize no one's going to pay you for that crap. So you're educated, you're young, you're thin, you can string a sentence together. Who's going to hire you? Sales. Yeah, people say, yeah, well, he seems all right. He's got the right personality. Let's give him a shot. And then you get into it. And when you first start in sales, you often do relatively well. I call it the rookie phase. And the reason why rookies are good at selling is because they don't know what they're doing. So when you don't know what you're doing, you're naturally better at asking questions of understanding. Yeah, and so they start off all right, and they think, well, this is easy. But as they fill their brain up with product knowledge and information and experience, they go away from being curious and interested in prospects and trying to understand to trying to impress them, to show them how much they know, because they feel that a professional, because when you look at other professions, they're very good at demonstrating their skills. So salespeople want to emulate that. But in fact, that's the worst thing to do because then they become a character and a personality that actually turns most prospects off. And then we get shows like The Apprentice, right? I swear to God, The Apprentice is funded by the Procurement Society of Great Britain. It's a PR campaign to make people, remind people of just how awful actual salespeople are, how sleazy, dishonest, unethical. It's all part of this. Yeah, and then people grow up with this is what salespeople are like. This is how I have to be. It's gift of the gab. You know, those expressions. He could sell ice to an Eskimo. That means he's a crook. There's nothing noble in selling ice to people that don't need ice. You know, so we got this, there's almost a bravado in our absolute unprofessionalism. And salespeople also are quite independent, a lot of them. And the last thing they want is accountability. So this is the one thing they forget about other professions, lawyers, doctors, accountants. They have very high accountability thresholds. If you screw up, we're able to figure out exactly where you screwed up and how, and then we can assign blame. With salespeople, it's never their fault. Never our fault we lost the deal. We did nothing wrong. But when they win, they get all the praise. Yeah? And I bring accountability. It's like, no, let's listen to that call. Why did you fuck that up? Yeah, and you've got to get them to go through it. That meeting, why didn't we should have won that deal. Why didn't we? And you can go back and figure out, it's because you never asked this. Had you asked that one question, had you understood that better, we would have won. Or how is it we got all the way to the end of this pitch process and we suddenly discovered they have no money? How did you screw that up? How did you not get out of them that they were broke? Oh, well, they lied. Yeah, we know prospects are going to lie. Your job is to get to the truth. What do you do all day? So, kind of lost where I'm going, but what I'm getting at is salespeople don't see what they do as a real skill. They just think you can blag your way through it. Yes, if you get in front of enough people, people will give you money. It's not hard getting money off of people. You can mug an old lady. You can kick a tramp to death. You can rob a bank. Getting money is not hard. And it's even easier if you discount and negotiate. Yeah? I mean, I prohibit now, I won't work for SaaS companies. It's a rule. Sick and tired of SaaS companies. Their entire model is big, free trial, discount. That's not selling. Yeah? So it's like, and the mindset is just that, volume. And it's good for the VC capitalists because it all looks good on the metrics. But at the end of the day, it's a lot of hot air. So, yeah, I think the reason you need an ego is because if you didn't have it, you'd realize you're a husk of a human being. You're a hustler. You're a shyster. Yeah, so they have to have the bravado to get through it. Maybe that's a bit harsh. I don't know.
So when you reflect back, Benjamin, what would you say is the biggest mistake you've ever made in sales?
The biggest mistake I've ever made. Biggest mistake I've ever made in sales. The biggest mistake. I can think of instances where I've screwed up, but the biggest mistake. I think the biggest mistake isn't mine. I think it's the world's and society's. And that is, the biggest mistake is no one actually ever teaches this. You could teach people how to sell at university. It could be a whole course. It's an entire communications course. No one teaches it. Just like no one teaches you proper math. They teach you Pythagoras and trigonometry, math that you're never going to use. No one teaches you taxation, math that you need to know, stuff like important stuff, yeah? Because maybe they don't want you knowing how the system works, because if you know how it works, maybe you do too well. But so I think the biggest mistake was never appreciating early enough that selling is a skill, that selling was just all down to my winning personality and my ability to master the facts. And I think for years I lived under that delusion. And I did. That it was me. People bought me. People bought because of me. People liked me. They warmed to me. And I really bought into that. And it turns out that is all bollocks. Yes, there's an element people need to, they can't have outright hostility towards you, but most of the time people will buy in spite of you. If you have something I want, you may be a bit of a knob, but I'm still going to buy from you. I don't need a relationship. I've never met a prospect that's ever said, I need a relationship to buy. Salespeople are the only ones that say you need a relationship. Have you ever said, I can't buy from this restaurant because I don't have a relationship with them? We've never had any outreach. It's like, no. Computers, systems, nothing. So no, I think the biggest mistake I had was believing the bullshit that you're constantly force-fed about what makes good salespeople. Gift of the gab. Yeah. Blah, blah. Nah, it's bollocks. And work harder. Washing machines work hard, but they don't achieve much.
I totally agree that the need to be liked is one of the biggest things you'll see in elite people versus low performers. The elite just don't have that need to be liked. When you need to be liked and often loved, you just struggle in the role of asking the questions and whatnot. In terms of the realization of that moment, then, that you don't need to be liked, it's not about you. What happened for you to realize that?
What happened for me to realize that?
What's your burger moment for that?
Well, I don't think there's a specific moment. What it is when you learn that you can pretty much ask any question so long as you do it in the right way, what you soon discover is you can get away with a lot. And the moment I realized I could ask really, really awkward, uncomfortable questions of someone I was trying to sell to, and the response was never what your mind is telling you it will be. So when I work with clients, one of the biggest things is teaching them to ask a lot tougher, challenging, uncomfortable questions. And their fear is you can't ask a prospect that. And when you challenge it, it's why can't you ask them that? Why? They said, well, you just can't. It would be rude. Well, why would it be rude? And then you still get, this is nothing to do with the prospect. This is you. It's how you're going to feel if they react in a certain way. You're more concerned about how you feel, not the prospect. So don't give me this crap that you won't ask a question because you're genuinely concerned about the prospect. No, you're scared about how you'll feel if they react in a way that makes you uncomfortable. And because you're so scared of being uncomfortable in front of a prospect, you don't do your job. Imagine hiring a lawyer or a surgeon that didn't ask you personal questions to get to the truth. How can they help you if they don't know what's going on? How can I help you if I'm trying to be your friend and I don't want to ask you anything that might upset you or make you feel awkward? So I won't do my job as a surgeon. I won't do that. It's pathetic. We don't expect that. And I say, do you have to like your lawyer? No. Do you have to like your surgeon? No. You just need a trust that they're going to be able to do their job. Yes. And this is it with salespeople. They don't have to like you. Now, don't get me wrong. You don't go out of your way to be a prick. But there's a difference between being liked and trying to be liked. And most people that meet me in the flesh when I get them kind of like me. They warm to me. But I'm not going out of my way to be liked. That just happens because I'm doing my job well. And I respect what he's doing, and I quite like the way he's doing it. And I actually do think the guy can help us. Yeah, maybe he's a bit blunt and rough around the edges, but I'm not hiring him for that. I'm hiring him to learn how to sell. So that was the moment for me. And then when clients phone me up and say, I asked this question, I go, how did they respond? I go, not the way I thought. And the reaction of a prospect is never as bad as what you tell yourself. So it's all about, salespeople are very self-centered and I-centered. It's all about them getting the deal, getting the win, getting the prospect over the line, getting the answers to my question, getting them to see my way of thinking. They're very selfish. And so why would I do anything that makes me uncomfortable? I won't. So I'll do whatever I think makes me comfortable, and I justify it by saying, but that's what the prospect wants. No, they want the right solution to fix their problem. That's what they really want.
You spoke a lot about what you've learned and how you've learned it, and said by your own words, you're not a master yet. Do you believe today you still do enough to learn and develop?
Do I do enough today? Probably not, would be the honest answer. I've tried reading sales books, but I find most of them frustrate the hell out of me because they seem to regurgitate the same thing, just slightly repackage it. And I still feel a lot of people that teach selling don't fundamentally get it. And I always look at how I've won business against other sales trainers because the sales trainers are acting exactly like the prospect salespeople. I remember one occasion winning a bit of business, and I phoned the guy. Well, I was asked to phone him, and I phoned this guy, and he'd already met with two other sales trainers. And what I got out of him during our conversation was what was pissing him off the most is that he's got these sales guys, and all they do is they go out, they meet with prospects, they draw up a quotation, a spec on how they can help, and then they spend their life chasing. And I said, and the conversation went for about an hour. And during this, he explained how often they were doing that, how many times a month. We were able to figure out how much it was costing him and all of this. And it's a lot of money, yeah. And then he goes, so how does it work with you, Benjamin? I go, well, the other sales trainers, what are they doing? When are you doing their tasting? He goes, no, I've asked them to send me a proposal. Can you send me one? I go, okay, well, before I do that, can I ask you a question? Yeah. The other guys the other sales trainers, have they sent you a proposal? He goes, yes. I go, out of interest, how much did they charge you for it? He said, no, they haven't charged me. And then I give him a stroke. I said, oh, is that because you negotiated them down? He goes, no, they sent it for free. I said, okay. I said, I'm confused. He goes, why? I said, well, we spent about 15 minutes of you telling me how your guys going out, doing quotes and proposals and chasing was pissing you off, yet the very two people that you've asked to teach you guys to sell are acting exactly the same way as you. I said, why the hell would you work with them? He goes, it's a very good point. I said, so he goes, what's it like with you? I said, this is it. You're going to pay me X amount. I'm going to come in. I'm going to do a taster session. And at the end of that day, you're going to make a decision. Do we want to work with Benjamin or do we not? I go, that's it. I got no proposal. He goes, all right, let's do that then. I go, what about the other two? He goes, no. You've just made me realize they're doing exactly what I don't want my guys to do. I want my guys to have to do what you've just done. That is it. So, yeah, selling is not being like everybody else. Selling is not showing up, throwing up and hoping. Selling is not quoting and hoping. Selling is not drawing proposals. That's what you do because you're trying to convince someone to use you, and you're already losing. You've given all the power and control to the one person that shouldn't have the power and control. The person with the problem should never dictate to the person with the solution the rules of the game. Crazy, right? When you start to see it like this, it's crazy. How am I letting the person with the problem dictate to me the person with the solution? But they got the money. Maybe. I could also lie to you. I don't need money to get you to do this. I just tell you I got money. Well, true. Have you ever found yourself being used? Yes. Ever been turned into a free consultant? Yes. Ever seen your ideas taken and run with without being paid? Yes. So why do you keep doing it? The definition of insanity. But no, but it's hard not to do that. Well, everybody else does it and the prospect demands it. What are you, a wimp?
It's a great story, and you're right. Why would the person with the problems dictate the rules of the game? If you were to do a self-assessment,
yes,
what do you think's your biggest weakness still yet to be fixed as a sales professional?
In sales?
Yeah.
My biggest weakness. I still think at times I don't go deep enough. It's very easy, like with anything in life, you can get into a bit of a routine and into a bit of a way. And so I've had so many sales meetings with people that buy my stuff. I can almost do it with my eyes closed because the conversations are so predictable now. And this is what I love about selling, and this is what I teach salespeople. We live in a finite universe. There's only so many things your prospects can ever say to you if you sell any product. There's only so many variables. And once you've heard them all, you've now got your little universe. And if you've got a good mind map, which I've done, it's all mapped out now. It doesn't matter what a prospect ever says to me in my world. I'm ready for it. And so I think it's quite easy to become it's very easy to become a bit too laid back, too relaxed. I remember complaining a couple of years ago. I said to my wife, I said, this is starting to get boring. She said, why? I said, people just keep giving me money now. I said, I don't even need to I know this is good. I said, this is not a bad thing. I said, but part of me's a little annoyed. I said, if it keeps starting like that, I'm going to have to quit. There's no challenge in this anymore. So in order to do that, you have to go deeper. So I think one of my biggest weaknesses will be maybe not going deep enough at times because I've just got so good at getting to people where I need them. And everyone could always be going deeper, I suspect. But I know I should be.
And what would you say to me then? Let's imagine I was going to come to you, wanted to work with you, wanted to pay for your training.
Yeah.
No, actually, let's change that. Let's imagine we're in a pub, just me and you have a conversation, and I'm saying to you, I don't feel like I go deep enough, but I'm successful enough. Which is effectively what you said to me.
Yeah.
What would you say to me?
Bizarrely, I'd say then fine. You've just said you don't go deep enough, but you're successful. So why change?
And I wondered though if you would not push someone to get better.
No, because let's listen to what you just said, because it's kind of what I've just said, because it's interesting, right? So if you said to me, I know I should go deeper, but I'm successful. So my first question, then why try harder? You need to now come up with a more compelling reason. I know I need to go deep. Yeah, I know you need to go deep, but you said you're successful. So if you're successful, why do you need to go deeper? Yeah. What's driving that?
So here's where I'm sort of just thinking, and you said it right at the start. Once you've done something, it's easy, you want to move on. Have you not just completed this now? Is it not time to move on and do something else?
It is. I've got like 12 months left and then I'm gone.
What does gone mean?
I'll be doing no more in-house training. I'm going to go traveling, taking the family. We're leaving next year. We're going to go do something completely different. I've done very well out of this. I've been blessed. And so it's time to have a bit of a change. That's why I've set up my online portal, my new sales platform, the salesmatrixcourses.com. That's going to be an ongoing creation. It's going to become a huge library of all my knowledge, content, videos. Everything's going to be there. It's a subscription model. So this is just to create a passive income. But I've always said to everybody, and I know this annoys some people, but the purpose of getting really good at selling is so you can get out. Yeah? People create businesses because at one point they have an exit. They'd like to sell it because they want to get out. Now, they may go off and set up another business. That's fine. And the same was for me. My ultimately, You want to get to a position when you build a business or a brand where you don't have to go out every day and sell it. People just give you money for it. That's the dream. You just, the irony is you get good at selling to become an order taker.
Benjamin, I've loved having you on the podcast. It's been really good to talk to you. And I genuinely, I feel like I could sit here for another hour and just ask you questions and watch you go. What would you say to someone that perhaps has had a light bulb moment now that they're like, okay, I don't know how to sell. What do I do? I feel like you've slightly answered that, but like perhaps they're just in that rut. They're too scared to make that change. They know they need to make that change, but they're too scared. What would your sign off bit of advice be?
Toughen up. You got to conquer your fear. If you're scared, and it is scary, and you've got to commit to wanting to get better. Yeah. And you're going to realize it's going to take your own money and your own time. Yeah. No one owes you an education. No one owes you a career. No one owes you anything. You have to go out and make it yourself. Yeah. And look, it's not hard to just get by in sales. It's not hard. That's fine. And if that's what you want for yourself, then that's fine too. Not everybody has to be really good at something. Yeah. I mean, I use lawyers all the time. You've got crap lawyers, you've got average lawyers, and you've got KCs. Yeah. Not everyone. If every lawyer was a KC, there'd be no point to a KC. Right? So every profession has its categories. If you want to get to the KC level, if you want to be someone that makes a lot of money, but does as little work as people that do average, then great. If you just want to make 50K a year and be happy on that, fine. So you got to find what's going to make you happy and then go for it. But yeah, it's not everyone. No, we have the top 1% for a reason. Only 1% get there. Only 5% get to the 5%. So if everyone's trying to get there, then the 5% ceases to be the 5%. So I try and be realistic with people. It's not everyone's job to excel in life. Just excel to the extent that you want to excel. There's nothing wrong with being average. There's only something wrong with being average if you're average and you hate it. Then you figure out how not to be average.
I love that. I would like you to just nominate someone that you think would be good to come on the podcast, talk about how they used to be crap at sales. I'm going to send this clip to them. So I want you to look at the camera and they're going to watch what you're about to say. Take the time you need because we can crop that down. But when you're ready, please call someone out to come on the I Used to Be Crap at Sales podcast.
Who would be? I'm trying to also think of something that'd be good for your audience. Have you interviewed Brad Burton?
No.
He's got a lot he could bring. He set up 4 Networking, became the largest networking organization in the UK. Then COVID almost destroyed it. Then he went online. Now he's a speaker. He's got a very different journey to me, but he's got a lot of insight. So I think he's certainly someone that I would suggest, obviously.
Invite him on.
Okay. So, Brad, if you're watching this and you have the opportunity and chance to come on Mark's podcast, I'd do it because you've got a lot of knowledge, a lot of insight, and a lot of experience that I know people watching this want to hear and could value as I have. So, if you're up for it, let Mark know.
Benjamin, absolute pleasure to have you on, and thanks very much.
No, thank you. It's been fun. I hope I didn't waffle too much.
Thank you.